I've been fascinated with art and music my entire life. In my adult life, I've been blessed to have met so many immensely talented visual and musical artists. Many from here in my own backyard. Kansas City has an abundant wealth of talented creators of original art. Join me, William Saunders, on a journey to illuminate the hidden architecture of creativity, how artists see, feel, imagine, and realize their inner worlds by engaging in open, exploratory dialogue. By bridging the rational and the intuitive, we aim to inspire fellow creators and curious audiences to appreciate the deeper forces behind visual and musical expression.
Inside the Creative Mind with your host, William Saunders.
Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Inside the Creative Mind. And today I am joined by the owner of Stroke of Red Studios, and this is Anastacia Drake. Hi.
Hello.
And we go back a ways. When I first, decided to immerse myself in the art and music community, I moved to the Westport area, which is, obviously the hub of where, all this really takes place. And my friend Corby introduced me to you. And, I feel very fortunate that back in the day, I was able to actually a couple times actually sit with you and paint with you. And we just, all of us would, go to a corner and kind of work on our projects and stuff like that. But, I was, from the get-go, I was always blown away by your content and, you're prolific, but beyond that, it just, some of these pieces are just absolutely mind-blowing. And I want to show our folks here some of the ones that just, when we first met, I was just like, seeing these made me go, not only are these gallery, level, but I mean, especially like, I'm going to put this one up here. To me, that's museum quality. I just love this. It's just, it blew my mind to see your use of color and how you do some of this stuff is just amazing. And those are probably my two favorite pieces that I've seen of your work. So let's start by tell the audience a little bit about yourself and kind of how, the Stroke of Red and how you came about, with this concept and, how long you've been doing it.
Okay. So I grew up in a tiny little Kansas farm town. I didn't even know being an artist was an option, let alone a thing. Like, we didn't really have art classes. We had art. It was more like a homeroom. Like, you went there, everybody got an A sort of deal. And so I really didn't even know that much about art. I was a closet artist, if you will. I had a pretty violent childhood growing up. And so I started drawing. I would get these really bad migraines. I think I was just too sensitive for my environment. And I started drawing, and I would get a lot of relief from that. And so I would draw literally like magazines. I would start from the front and I would draw the people all the way through, like whole notebooks. And I would just draw. I thought everyone could do this. I didn't know. And then I don't think I figured it out until I was 18. I'd moved to Hawaii to be a beach bum and find myself, right? And I'm sitting on a beach one day and I'm sketching this little girl, and somebody comes up and offers me money for it. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, here, take it, and then somebody else comes up and commissions me, and I don't even know, again, I don't know art's a thing, right? So I'm like, well, maybe if you just bought me some pencils and a sketchbook, I'll do your grandson, and that was sort of my first, like, wait, can't everyone do this? And they were like, no, not everyone can do this. So I started out, I apologize, I have a dog in the background here. I started out with sketching, and then my grandmother handed me paints one day. She had a bunch of old paints, and she's like, you're the creative grandchild, here you go. And didn't do anything with it for a long time. Had a really bad day at work one day, pulled it out of the closet, and I didn't have any paint brushes. I had some butter knives and, like kitchen utensils, and I got out and I started creating. I think I created for like 12 hours straight. And I was like, oh, that's what I needed. And it went back in the closet and I didn't touch it. And fast forward, I think I'm giving you a whole history here, so I apologize.
No, it's perfect.
I think, let's see, I was 25, fast forward, I'm doing the corporate world. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, right? I'm in marketing. And I was misdiagnosed with cancer. And it completely rocked my world. Within 1 week, my grandfather, who was sort of a father figure growing up, died. The next week, I was misdiagnosed with cancer. I'm working 80-hour weeks, killing myself. And I just thought, like, is this the life that I want to live? And it's not. And I literally was waking up in the middle of the night, like throwing up off the side of the bed. Like I was a train wreck and I couldn't process anything. It was all happening too fast. And I was fortunate enough to be dating someone at the time who knew about art. And he pulls out all my paints and he's like, you got to put this somewhere. And I started painting. And I mean, my entire apartment was covered in paint. It didn't turn off. It was like somebody opened a valve and it just started pouring out. And it was amazing. And again, I was just doing it for me. I didn't know anything about art. I was just playing. And I was over near Lawrence, Kansas at the time, and a art show opportunity became available. I would have never put my stuff in. And he submitted one of my pieces and it got in to a show. And I cried. I was like, they're going to know I'm not really an artist. I was just like, I was devastated that he would do this to me. And then out of 200 pieces, 5 sold and mine was one of them. And it sort of like made me step back and I was like, really? And I think art for me at that point was just, it's my voice. And that's what it's always been. I've always tried to keep it true to myself. It evolves. It's always evolved over time. It's always changing. And I'm open to that because it usually reflects something that's going on with me somewhere in my life.
That the first time you realized that this is something that you could do, as a professional? Is that when that kind of clicked?
Absolutely. I mean, I still didn't think I could. I didn't. It was like, whoa, somebody wants to buy my art. That wasn't, I was interested at that point. I was like, well, what's this thing? I can make some money from this. What? And what really kicked it in was I was really miserable. A couple of years later, my relationship was ending. I was like, what am I doing with my life? I think that midlife crisis, if you will, or not midlife, quarter life crisis, they call it. I was having that quarter life crisis. And I was like, I said I was going to travel and do all these amazing things, and I never did any of it. And again, I had that marketing background. So I got online, I started researching art and travel, and I found an artist residency in Budapest. And I thought,
wow.
I have nothing left to lose if I apply for this. I'm in the same boat I started in. And I applied for it and I was accepted. I won. So I was like, all right, we're going to take this big leap. I quit my job. I went to Budapest and I was like, this is cool. And I was so intimidated because everybody was somebody except me, right? And I just sat back and I watched everybody and I talked to people. And after that, I thought, well, I don't want to go home. So I applied for another one in Italy and I won. And I went down to Italy. And then I spent a year sort of traveling Europe and selling artwork to support myself and kind of figuring out what I wanted to do with myself. I had won an artist fellowship to move to India to do work with the kerosene brides. It's the women that are set in fire in the rural areas. And usually they're disowned by their families and they have no education. And I really wanted to start a foundation and work with those women. And so I had won a fellowship and a grant to go do that, but it was about 9 months out. And I was like, awesome. I'm going to move back to Kansas. I'm going to sell everything I have in storage. And I'm just going to go be this weird little hippie artist, traveling the world, nomad style. I don't know what I'm doing with my life, but this is what it's going to be. And I found a house sitting job in Kansas City, moved to Kansas City. I didn't know anybody. And I had about 9 months and I was trying to get my art out there, but I kept hitting kind of roadblocks because I didn't know anybody. And I had met someone and, we dated a little bit. And then I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work out. Like, I'm out of here in a couple months. I'm moving to India, whatever. And this is probably TMI, but it does relate to my story. I'm a month from living on a friend's couch, and I find out that I'm 5 months pregnant, on birth control, like never even dawned on me. And all of a sudden I went from being this nomad hippie artist to I'm going to be a mom in 4 months. And I own nothing. I have no job. Like, I don't know what to do with myself. And I learned to hustle. That's when I was like, I need to make a living. I've got to feed a child. And I was applying for jobs, but no one's going to hire a pregnant woman. Come on. Hey, by the way, I need to leave in 4 months. Like, it's not going to happen. Yeah. And so it was just me. And I was like, I've got to make this work. And after my son was born, I hustled my ass off, and I literally turned my living room into like an art studio. And I wore my baby in a little sling and taught classes. And he's like so social because, he just was raised around all this creativity and these people. But that was when it was like sink or swim. Like, it wasn't even an option anymore. I had to make a living from my art. And that was really what pushed me, I think, where I wouldn't have probably taken that huge leap before, but it was like, I got to feed my kid. So I think that really, and then, I let go of like, how am I going to do this otherwise? And I just went all in and just consumed my life with art pretty much. So.
That's really a fast. I don't know if I knew all that. Yeah, I don't think so. Because
when you met me, I was on the struggle bus. Like, I think my kid was still pretty little, and
yeah, he was
just trying to make ends meet. Yeah.
Yeah, which was wild, because we both had little guys that were running around eating crayons.
Yeah, exactly.
At the same time. So, one thing I do know about you is that you are an outdoors lover like I am. And my question is, or let me at least say this, that, when we first met, one of the things I was really fascinated by was you had this incredible way of doing trees. And whenever I would look at these, I would be like, oh, I want to be out there. Oh, I want to be out there. And here's an example of, of one of your pieces. And, I obviously I just love these, but the question I have with respect to this is, does any of that play a role in your creative process? Because I know absolutely. For me, nature absolutely does.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where my quiet places, my happy places, I get a lot of ideas when I'm out in nature hiking. Life slows down. I love hiking. I tell people I love hiking because I'm so clumsy. So it forces me to be in the moment, right? Like, I can't be thinking about everything. I have to pay attention to what I'm doing. But right. I notice colors and textures and, all of those things. And then I walk away and I'm like, this is okay. I'm energized. I'm inspired. Let's go, and it's, nature is huge for me. Absolutely.
True. There's, I spent a lot of time at Shawnee Mission Park, and when I'm there, I see a lot of people, with headphones on, and I've mentioned this before, and I think maybe another episode, or at least talking about different stuff. I don't ever do that. I want to have all my senses engaged while I'm doing this. And I even wrote a song, acoustic based, called "The Top of the Cottonwood Trees," and it was inspired by listening to, and not, because in childhood my neighbor's house had these really tall cotton trees, and they would climb it, and I'd be like, I ain't getting up there. But but they also had, in the park would have these giant cottonwood trees, and I just love listening to them, because when you get a nice breeze, it's the only thing that's really making noise out there, other than the birds and little critters and stuff. But yeah, that's nice. And has anything that you've seen out in nature directly translated to, I'm going to go paint something similar to this?
It has. I mean, many times. Trails. I have a piece I'm working on now. I did a hike last year with my son in Arizona through the desert. And there's so much color in the desert, and you would never think that. And I mean, there's just,
Sure.
I'm seeing shadows and lights and colors, and it was just amazing. And I haven't shown anyone or done much with it because I can't quite figure, like I want to do the piece justice. And so, but there's that also that emotional component to it of, I was there with my son and we had this amazing, like, we waited too long because we wanted to watch the sunset. So we're having to hike out with like our phone flashlights, like rookie move, right? But yeah, no, there's definitely some places. I came back from Mexico after scuba diving, and the water is crazy blue, like this teal, and it became like my favorite color. Like for a while it was in every single painting I did. It was like, oh my god, I love this so much. So yeah, it definitely influences my paintings and certain places as well.
Do you have a favorite artist?
Mine's so cliche. It's Van Gogh. It's like,
No, there's nothing wrong with
what
that.
everyone says, but I mean, he was such an interesting individual anyway. And he had quite the story, but the texture he uses, that you can feel his paintings, like the bold colors, the lines, the texture. And this is coming from somebody who didn't have an arts education, right? But I looked at
Right.
his work and I was like, whoa. I mean, it makes me feel, and that's what I want. And yeah, I love his stuff because of that.
I remember thinking to myself how fortunate I was to live in a city that actually has a museum that
Yeah.
has pieces of his in there.
Yep.
Just kind of a mind blower. I have a my two are yeah, Gustav Klimt is probably my fave, and I've tried to work a lot of, if I had unlimited funds, everything I do would be have some gold leaf on it,
Right.
And the other one's Gary Larson.
Oh yeah. I love it.
Yeah, just his wit is just incredible, just crazy. So I want to talk a little bit about this. I got to go back up here and bring these up. Tell me, when I first found out about these, you were one of the first people I thought of, because I was like, I hope she does one of these. And sure as can be,
Yeah.
lo and behold, there's these. So tell me a little bit about, obviously, were you asked or did you submit for this? And then obviously you were accepted because I'm looking at them, but tell me a little bit about the story behind these.
Okay, so this was Kansas City does this Parade of Hearts. And you have to apply, and then you have to give them a concept of what you're thinking. And I had wanted to do one in the past, but I just didn't have the room. And I finally had the room. It came up, and the theme was community. And I took it super literal. Like I looked at some of the other artists and I'm like, how did I get so literal? And it was all about community. So I sat down and I thought, what does community mean to me? And I grew up in a town of 1,200 people. And there's definitely a community there. Not only is everyone up in your business, but if someone's house burns down, they come running. When my dad passed away of cancer, you wouldn't believe the outreach and the money they raised. Just such a tiny little community does so much. They have this massive fundraiser in the community that I'm part of every year that raises money for people in the community with cancer, and then I moved to Kansas City, and Kansas City is this fascinating city where it's like a small town in a city,
Right.
like it's a really cool place to live. It feels like a small town, and I like it here. I grew up in this little, like lower middle class farm community, all white people. I never even met someone of a different ethnic background until I went to college, like it was bizarre. And so here I am raising my son, and like 50% of his classmates are of a different ethnic background. And we're having these really candid conversations. And he's like, I don't get this whole discrimination thing, And I'm like, yes, I'm doing it right, But that's what Kansas City is. It's like this whole little melting pot, if you will, of all these communities and different backgrounds. And I love that so much because we all have something to learn from each other. And so that was really my thought when doing that heart, was how much I love Kansas City on the one side. And then on the other, just all these communities coming together and these different backgrounds coming together. I do want to share a really cool story about what happened to that heart. So that heart ended up going to the Jewish Community Center, which was amazing because of what's going on in the world right now, right?
Right.
Then they auction them off, and all that money goes to charities throughout Kansas City. When it auctioned off, they won't tell us who bought it. And I'm like, come on, can you just give me a hint? Like, I'm not going to bug them. I just want to know where it ended up. And they wouldn't tell me. And I was at Irish Fest last year, and I had a booth, an art booth at Irish Fest. And this guy comes up and he's like looking at my work, and I'm stepping back, watching him. And then he asks about my process. And I'm like, okay, he knows about art. We're going to start talking. And somehow in the conversation, I said, yeah, I did one of the hearts for Parade of Hearts. Have you heard of that? And he's like, yeah. And he goes, which one did you do? And I start describing it to him. He starts crying. And I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on here? And he pulls up his phone and he goes, is it this one? I go, yeah, it's that one. He goes, I just bought that, and I've been trying to find you. He goes, I knew your name, but I didn't know how to find you. And I'm like, what? And he goes, I wanted permission to use it the way that I want to use it. And I'm like, well, it's yours. You can do whatever you want with it, right? You may have heard him. He's called the KC Patch Man, I think, Tom Helton. Down in the West Bottoms, he makes patches. Anyway, his wife had been a huge advocate of community, was a teacher, did a lot of work with inner city youth, and she died of cancer. And he bought my piece. When he saw it, he said it reminded me of her and her love for the community. And he bought it as a memorial to her. Wow. So he's having it placed with a QR code where you can scan and learn about her and her life, which is just, so there we are both at Irish Fest, just bawling our eyes out. I'm like, yep, I'm done. But I was so happy that translated, because that was what that piece was all about to me. And then I got there and I was like, maybe I got a little too literal, because, some of the pieces were pretty wild. They were amazing, but I was like, what? Did I just miss something? So no, I was super happy that it connected with somebody so strongly.
That is an amazing story. Wow. Yeah, I didn't have any, obviously any idea about any of that.
No.
I just was perusing, the studio photos, and I was like, oh yeah, I definitely want to have a conversation about that. And I'm so glad I did. Although you about made me.
I don't get through it often. I mean, we were literally, my husband's got pictures of us crying, holding on to each other. And it was such an emotional experience. In fact, he texted me today, and he's having it installed, with security and everything. And he's like, I just want to let you know where we're at with your piece. And I'm like, it's your piece now. But
right. Yeah.
It's offered up that friendship, which is really cool.
That is so incredible. One thing I'm curious about that I made a note of before we got started recording was you mentioned that you will paint over stuff, like a canvas, like you have a finished piece, but you'll paint over it. I do the exact same thing, and I remember a couple times. That when I'm getting ready to do that either one of the kids or somebody in the family would say, no, what are you doing? Don't do that. And I'd be like, well, this isn't working for me. And I got an idea what I can use. And I don't have that many of these big scale canvases. So I kind of like to do with it what I want to do with it. Right. Is that something you do often, or is it just like once in a blue moon? Or a lot of people have reservations about doing that, but
a lot of people do. I used to. I think when I would do it when I started out because I didn't like something. Right. And then people would get really upset with me, like, you can't do that. And I'm like, but it doesn't, no. I document everything now. Right. Yeah. But I will paint over things, and genuinely, if it gets painted over, it's served its purpose in my life. And what I mean by that is, I can tell a story with almost every single piece of what was going on in my head, what was going on in my life at that moment. And I've done pieces that were like very significant at that point in my life, and they meant a lot to me. And then fast forward 5 years and it served its purpose, right? Like I don't connect with it anymore. And I'm okay to let it go. And it's almost freeing in that sense. Like it served its purpose. Now I can let it go and then make it into something new and fresh.
Sure. If you had to guess at how many pieces you've done in your adult life, just take a ballpark guess at what that might be.
Thousands. I mean, I really don't. I sold from August to September, I sold 56 pieces. I mean, if that gives you, I'm always painting. So
Right. Yeah.
I couldn't guess like thousands. I'm always painting. Even if
Right.
it's like I'm constantly painting.
You remind me of like 2009 me with music. I mean, I was just so prolific during that little period of time from like 2009 through 2014. I probably have, hundreds of songs that I did during that period. And when I look at your portfolio, I was like, good Lord, how many pieces does she have? It's
Well,
like,
because some of my stuff is thicker, I usually have 3 or 4 going on at a time because
right.
things have to dry. So I'll have 3 or 4. And then, once I finally get out and I start posting them, people are like, when do you sleep? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is my centering place. Like
Right.
I become an uber bitch after a while. And my husband's like, you should probably go spend some time in your art studio. And I'm like, gotcha. like I'm gonna check out for a while.
I can relate to that. One of the things I do find really fascinating is you do series. You will do I have to be real intentional with that if I'll have to plan a series. When you have a series of paintings that you're doing, do you plan that in advance, or do you do one and go, oh, I want to do more of these?
That's usually, I don't usually think that far ahead, honestly. I'm usually pretty much in the moment, and then I'll get really inspired by something. And that's when I start whipping out like 4 pieces. And I'm like, okay, and I have this idea, and I have this idea, and I have this idea. And and that's usually where this series ends up coming out of. And I'm like, okay, now, and then get spinoffs of that. So yeah, I wish that I could say I was one of those people who sit and think a really long time and like come up with but I'm not. I'm like in the shower and I'm like, oh my God, I need to get the studio right now and put this on canvas.
And here is one of those that I'm talking about is these portraits with the flowers done on them. Did these originate to this, or is it vice versa?
Vice versa.
Okay, so this one occurred first, and then these kind of followed?
Yes. And really, honestly, I'd had the idea for the multiple flowers for over a year. I just wasn't sure how to make it happen. So
Gotcha.
I've been playing with that idea. And then I started doing the little ones with the single flowers. And they were so emotional for me. Yeah, that one actually had a lot of meaning for me. And then I was able, so the emotion going into that one was a little bit darker, and then it transformed into more of this blooming series of lots of flowers, if you
Right.
will.
Yeah, I love these. When I first saw these, I was like, wow, these are just simply incredible.
I've got
Um,
so many ideas for these right now.
Well, but to my point about the series piece, I find it really interesting how you can take one thing and then make 7 or 8 of them, and they're all unique, but they still all tie into that theme, which is something I don't think I've ever done that ever. But I love the fact that you do that. And has anybody, when you've done a series like this, has anybody said, I want them all?
I haven't had that happen yet. I'm open to it.
Yeah. So,
but I haven't. No, it's usually which one do I connect with the most is the question I get. Like I love this one, I love this one, I love that. Which one do I connect with the most? And that's what I usually get more than
Mm.
anything.
But for our listeners, if you happen to want to purchase a whole series,
Absolutely.
this
We're
holiday
game.
season.
Come on over.
Okay, that's fantastic. So let's take a short break, and then when we get back, I want to do a deep dive on your latest. Is this your latest piece, or is it one of the latest pieces? This one.
She's my latest piece. I
She's
just completed her. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so when we get back, we're going to take a dive into She Overcomes. Okay.
Perfect.
365. That's the reality of how many opportunities you have each year to move yourself closer to realizing your dreams and ambitions as a creative person. It doesn't matter if you are a visual artist or a musical artist, you still have 365 opportunities per year to move the needle on your career. Are you satisfied with the results of the last 365 opportunities? Well, if you aren't and continue to do things the exact same way, you are assured of getting the same results. Do what the big organizations do, get a secret weapon, otherwise known as a strategic plan. We call it a roadmap for your success. Trust me, we've heard it all. Planning, it's too restrictive. It's too hard. Planning, if done right, isn't confinement, it's empowerment. At Tiny Messenger Media, we have taken decades of strategic planning knowledge and have refined the process to be more appropriate for the creators of art and music. Find out more at tinymessengermedia.com and give yourself a fighting chance at making your next 365 opportunities yield your best results yet.
Okay, we're back, and we're going to do a deep dive on She Overcomes. And this is just a fascinating piece. Why don't we talk a little bit to start off with, just solely about the technical aspects of this piece?
Okay, so like with the flowers, as you can probably tell from the picture, those flowers are probably a good inch and a half off the canvas. They're very thick. They're made with heavy body acrylic paint. This started years ago when I told you I had moved to Kansas City. I didn't know anybody. Somehow, and I still to this day don't know how, the Arthritis Foundation found out about me and my work. And they approached me. They have this program called Art for Arthritis, and it's working with kids who have juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And they said, hey, we hook artists up with these kids. You do a little art project. We auction it off for money. Would you be interested? And I'm like, cool. I'll finger paint with the kids. Sure, no problem. And then I showed up, and they were like, well, we gave you our hardest case. And I'm like, what does that mean? They gave me a girl who was 12 years old who was going blind from arthritis, a very rare form of arthritis. I believe it's called Behçet's. And she had been shot full of steroids just trying to maintain what she had. So not only is she 12, which is a terrible age anyway, you're going through all these changes. She's going blind, and she's put on about 150 pounds from all the steroids they've pumped her full. So she's just miserable. She's an unhappy little girl. And I'm trying to talk to her, and she really just doesn't want to talk about it. And so finally I said, you know what, this is your chance to tell people what arthritis means to you. So if we were to put that on a canvas and a picture, what would you do? And she said, well, my life's a roller coaster. And she said, so I would draw a roller coaster. So I draw a little roller coaster, and she goes, I wake up in the morning, I feel fine. And then I get migraine headaches, and I go down, I take my medicine, I come up, and then the kid's making fun of me, and I go down. She's like, my life is a roller coaster. And I said, that's a great place to start. And then we drew this out, we were talking, and then she said, can we draw the kids that making fun of me flying off the page? And I'm like, yes, we definitely can. So she starts opening up to me about that. And then she says, I always wanted to be an artist, but I can't. And I said, really? Well, why not? And she said, because I can't see. And I said, so I took Van Gogh, because he had visual problems. Monet had visual problems. And I took their work and I blew them with a projector up onto a wall so she could see it. And she goes, see, that makes me happy. I wish I could do that for people. And I said, you can, you just have to find a different way to do it. So swear to God, nose touching canvas, she draws out this little landscape, but then she can't see it to paint it. I mean, she couldn't see it all. And so I thought, how do I make this accessible to her? And at the time, I didn't know anything. I took a hot glue gun and I traced her work, and then she filled it in by filling it. And when we took it to the auction, she put it up, and we asked people to touch the artwork so they could see the world the way she sees it. And she became an ambassador in her school for handicapped kids. She did all these amazing things. She's like, I didn't know that I could do this. And I'm like, you can do it all. You just have to do it your way. But what was really cool for me in that process was not only watching it change her, but how many people I watched that night get tears because they were allowed to touch artwork. Like they were making a connection with something very taboo, right? And you're seeing these little inner child people kept hugging, thank you for letting me touch it. And I was just like, there's this disconnection, and I want to fix that. So I started creating very textured artwork. And when I do shows, I invite people to touch. I mix varnish in with the paint so that it hardens and it can be touched and then it can be wiped off. And people are always grateful. I mean, it's so fun for me to watch their reactions when they're touching the paint. And then I had a friend who was actually asked to leave the Nelson-Akin because she had a son who has severe autism, and he's very tactile and he wanted to touch. And I'm like, well, bring him over. You know, he wants to touch, I'll let him touch. So I've started opening up my artwork for people who need a little more accessibility. And that's sort of how it started. And then there's this whole sculptural component that's starting to come into my art. And I'm like, how far can I push paint? You know, like, what can I do? How far can I push it? So that's where all the texture comes from. And like I said, my work is always evolving, right? Like I'm always pushing, what can I do now? What can I do now? So long story there. Sorry, very wordy.
No.
That's where all those textures come from. And then I connect with them for the most part. Does that answer your question there on the technique?
Sure, yeah. That's an amazing story. You know, wow. You know, I wish I had known these things, the things I've known about you just never included so many of these things. So I feel, I'm like the audience, I'm learning this stuff for the first time, and I'm blown away. Tell us about the idea for this specific piece. How did it come about, and how did it start to formulate?
So this is sort of a piece of a whole. So, and I say, you had mentioned series earlier, but this piece is the latest piece in that. I found myself a couple months ago really struggling mentally. The state of the world, politics, social media, and I'm getting on there. And I remember coming home one day and I was just so distraught by everything in the world. And I remember telling my husband, I'm like, I just don't want to be on this planet. Like, I just can't handle what is going on right now. And he's like, well, you need to work that out. Like he's very black and white. And he's like, you don't really have a choice. I mean, you do, and that's not an option. So like, work it out. And I realized I just had a lot of rage. And then I started to realize I had a lot of female rage, which so another part of my life is I'm an integrative women's health coach. And that came out of realizing that there's so limited research for women's health. I mean, until 1993, it was pretty much illegal for women to be in clinical studies. So everything we know about women's health is based on a male body. And so it's been very frustrating. And as I work with these older women usually and hearing their problems, and like, the doctor says this is normal. And I'm like, that's not normal, And so I've got that, and my body's changing and nobody has answers. So I'm having to search and do my own research. And then, the state of the world is just a show right now. And I was really dark, and I thought, I need to channel this, and I'm going to go paint. And I came up with all these ideas, and they were all very dark, and it didn't feel right to me. I'm like, I'm not a dark person, there's enough darkness in the world. I don't want to add to it. And so I thought, what is on the other side of that? And so that's sort of where this comes from. Poppies is very known for veterans. And I dug down into that. And the reason being is on battlefields, after everything was just decimated, poppies were the only thing that they were the first thing to grow back when everything else was killed off. And they're resilient, right? And that's where this sort of idea came from, is resilience and overcoming. And then the other pieces I have with more flowers, it was self-care. It was all about self-care, turning off social media, turning off the news, being present with my loved ones, being grateful, for what I do have. I just couldn't take the constant negativity and the propaganda, and it was just too much. And so I really was taking like female rage and trying to find the other side of it. And I think for the most part, I'm finding it and I'm there. We're blind, some of them, some of my paintings, her mouth is covered. She wants to scream, but she doesn't, but also we bloom from within, right? And so if we do those self-care things, we can overcome, we can be more resilient. It's what we choose to put our focus into. And that's really what this piece was about.
Did the idea kind of, when you came up with what you're going to do with this piece, did it all arrive, a whole? In other words, you kind of envisioned the complete work at the outset, or did you just kind of dabble in, then it formed itself?
There's an earlier sort of version of this that doesn't have texture. I was just sitting down to paint. I knew poppies was going to be a big part of that because poppies symbolizes that resilience. And in the first rendition, she has a watering can. So she's watering herself. It doesn't get more blunt than that, right? It's
right,
like,
yeah.
you need to feed yourself, you need to care for yourself, nurture yourself, and then you'll bloom. And so in the early rendition that doesn't have the texture, it's just a painting, there is a watering can, and I've got some more ideas, marinating in my brain right now with that concept. But this is, so by the time I got to her, I really thought, I think I know where I want to go with this piece. And I hadn't put so many poppies together, so I wasn't sure how that was going to turn out. A lot of the times it's like, let's try it and see what happens. And I love Bob Ross and that terminology, happy accident. Like, I would say the majority of my paintings are happy accidents. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I didn't expect that to happen. So I was really happy that this piece turned out the way I was hoping it would.
How do you manage when something isn't? Like just internal roadblocks and obstacles. If a piece is not working the way you're envisioning it, how do you navigate that?
I'll step away from it. I usually step away from it and work on something else for a little bit. I've got a piece. I have this amazing concept. It's taking this piece even one step further. But my flowers aren't where I want them, where I envisioned them yet. And so I started the piece, but I'm not willing to force it until I'm ready. And I'm not there. And I know that. Like, I know what I want it to be, and I don't have the practice yet or the skill set yet to make it what I want it. So she's just going to sit in the corner and wait patiently for me until I'm there. So that happens a lot.
Yeah. With me as well. I've got 5 or 6 things I've started and just kind of like, well, that's not really what it's not getting to where I want it to go. So you can just stay there until I'll come back around to you at some point.
Right.
But right now I just can't. How did you know when this piece was done? Or in general, how do you know when a piece is ready to just go, done?
That one's always hard. As an artist, I think you can keep working on something forever. I used to force myself to just sign it. And once it was signed, I had a rule that I wasn't allowed to touch it again, because if it sits there, I will keep doing it. I think I spend, so you can't tell, but I have this big red couch behind me in my art studio. And I will, when I get, you're up close to something and you're working on it and you can see all the imperfections. And I make it a point to step back quite often. And I'll hang it on the wall opposite, and I'll sit on the couch and just chill there for a little while. And I'll look away, I'll play with my dog, I'll play on my phone for a little bit, and then I look back up and I'm like, yep, it needs this or it needs this. But then after a while, I'm like, yep, she says exactly what I want her to say, and we're good now.
Cool. How does your role change with it? I mean, your relationship change with it over time? Um, and I've said this before in some of these other interviews. When I have something that's complete, a lot of times it's like a child. I'll just say, go forth and be in the world and be whoever you are. And I think I kind of know the answer to this because the hearts kind of tells the story. It's your piece, whatever you want to do with it, you can do whatever with. But how does your relationship to your artwork kind of how does it change over time after a piece is done?
It does definitely change. I put so much into that piece, even if, it's a landscape. There's usually a story behind it. I'm usually working through something, processing something. Definitely with the series right now, I'm processing some of my own things going on, but she's completed and I'm like, okay, I got what I needed. I put in what I needed to process into this, and I'm now ready to move on to the next thing. And she'll be there for a while, but I don't need to keep her. And then what's really amazing, even though I have some galleries that rep me, I love selling in person. And the reason being watching other people connect to it. So
Right.
other people, will just stare at pieces, and I've seen tears or I've seen smiles, and I'm like, what's this piece saying to you? And they're like, oh my God. And they'll share some really amazing story with me, and I'm like, that's it. Yes. That, they're connecting with it. I've connected with it. I've made my peace with it. I've processed with it. And now, like you said, it's sort of like a child, like, go do your thing now, and so a lot of people, I think they ask artists a lot, do you have a rough time getting rid of your pieces? I don't,
Yeah.
because I'm constantly making art, and I want to keep working. I mean, it's my own shit, right? Like I'm just putting it all into paintings,
Right.
whether
Yeah.
good, bad, inspired, whatever. And so that Ganesha piece that you showed in the beginning, I actually painted that when my dad was going through cancer treatment, and my parents were living with me temporarily while he was going through cancer treatment. And Ganesha is the Hindu god for remover of obstacles. And I was feeling pretty hopeless at that time. And I was just like, man, I'll take any help I can get right now. And that's where that piece came from. It gave me something to meditate on, the soothing colors of the blues. That was, that blue was very healing to me. And I just felt like I needed that in my life, but I don't need that anymore. That phase is moved from my life. It served its purpose while I had it, and I loved it intently, but then I didn't need it anymore. So you let it go.
Right. Yeah. I find that when I think about your work, one of the things I think that really stands out to me is I don't know of anybody who is better at the use of color. And it's not just the color selection, the palettes, the swatches you use to create these. It's more how just brilliant it stands out so much on the canvas that quite literally, I mean, I can sit there and just like look at these things for a long period of time and just go and just let it absorb. And it's like, to the eye, the colors pop so much that I just don't see that in a lot of people's work, and I do see, quite a bit of work.
Thank you for saying that. I love that. I love color, obviously. And I think a lot of people are afraid of color.
Right. Yeah.
I'll have people who are like, well, I'd like your piece, but I don't know if it'll match my house. I'm like, let me bring it over. And then once it's in their place, they're like, oh, okay, like this is really cool. But I think a lot of people are afraid of color, and I just want to go all in. Like sometimes I'm like, maybe I should step back a little. I love color.
Do you find that people tell you that a lot, or how does the public, when they're telling you about your own work, what are the things you're hearing them as far as the descriptions, how they're
Um,
describing you?
I mean, I've heard both sides. I've had people come up and they're like, "That's not art," and I'm like, "That's cool. There's Nelson down the road," like.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm guessing they're talking more like fine Renaissance fine art. Like I'm not sure exactly what they mean by that. That's
Right.
totally cool. Everybody has their own. I would say the majority of comments I get is one that I absolutely love, and they'll be staring at my work and they'll say, "I don't know anything about art. It just makes me happy." And I'm like, that's the best
Sweet.
compliment I could have ever been given. Like that right there is the absolute best comment. It made you feel and it made you feel happy. I love that. And so that's usually people connect with my work, I think, because it does create those feelings of happiness. Bright, vivid, bold. Even, I painted cows for quite a while because I grew up in the country and cows are like big dumb puppies and I love them. And
Yeah.
people, I got commissioned to do like an 8 foot by 5 foot cow for someone's house. And I was like, they live in the city, and I'm like, why would you want this cow? And she's like, I look at it, it just makes me so happy. Like, that's awesome. There's no better reason than that. So, yeah, I think that's the biggest comment I get is, it makes me happy. And can I touch it?
I don't really understand art snobs. I can't relate to it because of the fact that it's all in the eye of the beholder. I don't When I do go to a gallery, regardless if it's a museum or a smaller gallery, I find that I just relate to what speaks to me,
Right.
and it doesn't matter if it's somebody who is from the 15th century, or if it's somebody that is a teenager today. I don't really care about the background. I don't really care about their resume. What I care about is, how does the piece that I'm looking at speak to me individually? And I get inspiration by all walks of life, that looking at a piece that just, it'll either speak to me or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, there's no harm, no foul. I'm not gonna poo-poo on it because it doesn't speak to me. I just, it's okay. Let's somebody else's cup of tea. It's not mine, but
Right.
that's somebody else's cup of tea. But the stuff that does speak to me, it just, like you said, it makes you happy, or it invokes something deep inside, um, similar to how music can.
Mhm.
If I'm feeling sad, if I see a piece that speaks to my or if I'm listening to music and I'm sad and I hear a song that really speaks to the feelings I have, I can relate. If I'm sad and I'm looking at a piece of artwork and it kind of tells the story of what I'm feeling at the moment, to me, that's what it's all about, is
Yeah.
finding something that is a reflection. It's like a mirror. I'm going to look at something and it's going to reflect back to me some of my own humanity, of what I'm experiencing at the moment, which, I think you have you have so many things that speak to me.
Oh,
um
thank you.
but that's why I think you have so many pieces out in the community, because people also speak to that as well. So tell everybody a little bit about, is there any big projects or anything else you got coming up soon, or into next year? And then, how can people get a hold of you? Because they really should be looking at some of these pieces for gifts and for birthdays, or even commission pieces. You do animals, you do all kinds of stuff. Just go look. On either on Facebook, or or you tell people where to go to check your stuff out.
Well, to actually see my stuff, I mean, I have Facebook, I have Instagram, just, put up my name, Anastacia with a C. It's on I believe it's written on here, but Anastacia, Drake, art. That's for Instagram and Facebook. And then you can also go to my website, which is literally just my name, anastasiadrake.com. I used to have like 4 other websites and I finally just put them all together under my name. I was scared people couldn't spell it. And then I got over that. So Give it a try. So that's where you can see my work. I sell online. I sell at several local galleries and some galleries across the US. You can get on my newsletter list, and I'm always listing, new stuff I'm working on, new things I'm doing. I'm always looking to get into different projects. My mind goes about 100 miles per hour all the time. So I can't say I have anything big events coming up, because honestly, this new Flower Female series, sort of this Overcome series, is my heart right now. I'm feeling it so hard. You can kind of see, the piece behind me I'm working on. It's going to
Right.
be a big, bright, bold sunflower piece. And it's really about looking for inspiration, right? Looking and being inspiration is what that's about. So, I really have this whole idea concept right now of this series that I want to work on. And I feel like maybe I'm stepping up my game a little bit from what I've done. Like, I'm really intentionally putting time into it and trying not to rush it. And I'm experimenting more with some things and materials. So yeah, I think right now I'm just kind of stepping back and going, all right, how do I level up, if you will? Like, let's take this to the next level, and let's see if I can make it sing even higher. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at right now.
Well, I can't tell you how thrilled I have been to see you and to have you be on this episode with me, because obviously I'm your friend, but I'm also a big fan of your work, and I think that people are going to see what I see, which is this amazing talent, and I hope that people will visit your site and visit you online, and hopefully go ahead and just commission a piece.
Right.
Get your own. You'll want
Exactly.
one.
You too can own an original.
So I can't thank you enough, and
Well, and
and
thank you
yeah,
for having me. I appreciate it so much.
sure thing. And stay tuned for more episodes, and yep, we'll see you next time.